When Ecovacs released their flagship robot vacuum, the X1 OMNI, it was missing one important feature, a lifting mopping system. My name is Jamie Andrews, and today we are going to take a look at the latest from Ecovacs, the T20 OMNI, which is the third iteration in the OMNI series and includes a lifting mopping system, object avoidance, and a self-emptying dock that also washes the mopping pads with hot water, an industry first, and also dries the mopping pads. On paper, this sounds like it should be a flagship and the most expensive, but it is not. With a retail price of $100 less than the recently reviewed T10 OMNI and almost $500 less than the flagship X1 OMNI, on paper the T20 looks to be the one to get, and in this video I'm going to put it to the test. Links to the X1 and T10 OMNI reviews are in the description below. The single biggest change when compared to others is with the lifting mopping plates, which now allow the T20 to properly mop and vacuum homes with a mixture of carpet and hard floors. The mopping plates lift 9 mm to clear low-pile carpet, and in my test it was as effective as other brands, but with a few software issues that first need to be ironed out. When the robot detects carpet, it should pause to give time to allow the mopping pads to fully lift. When evaluating the wetness of my carpets, the only place they got wet were right at the edges where the mopping plates were still down. The other potential issues are for some reason the mopping pads get lowered when backing up to the dock. I also noticed at times it would leave the dock with the pads down, which was just sort of inconsistent. This is not really ideal, especially if the dock sits on carpet, and I hope Ecovacs can resolve this with a future firmware update. The T20, just like the slightly more expensive T10, does not have an internal water tank. It relies on having to go back to the dock more frequently to re-wet the mopping pads, which is fine for people with a single-story home, but it makes it nearly impossible for people with multi-story floors who need that internal water tank to keep the pads wet, so just keep that in mind. I tested the mopping system using my standard mopping test, where I use baked-on hot sauce on my tile floor. This test was run with the water level set to high without using any detergent. I sent the robot out for 2 passes to clear the stains, and the T20, like the T10 OMNI, was able to beat the more expensive X1 OMNI in this test, and it cleared 100% of the hot sauce. Ecovacs made a few changes to the vacuum as well, increasing the power to a whopping 6,000 pascals. They also gave the T20 an all-rubber roller brush with removable ends, which will help with tangled hair. I was optimistic for these 2 changes, so I put them to the test, starting with my carpet pickup challenge, where I scatter 54 grams of colored rice on my medium pile carpet and sent the T20 out for 1 pass in Max Plus vacuum mode. The T20 was able to pick up 51 grams or 94%, which is not a bad score. Next, I tested the T20 using 130 grams of cat litter scattered on my tile floor with a vacuum power set to Max Plus, and I was fairly surprised as it is the second worst test result I've ever recorded. In the end, it only picked up 86 grams or 66%. Since the X1 and the T10 perform much better with this small vacuum motor, I assumed it must have something to do with a new style brush. So I installed the brush and the cover from the T10 and ran the test again, and things did improve some as it was able to now pick up 104 grams or 80%. This is still way less than my test result from the T10 and the X1 OMNI, so something else in this new design must be hampering the pickup on hard floor surfaces. Which leads me to the next change with the T20, which is a smaller and more narrow internal dustbin, sized at 300 milliliters versus 400 milliliters on the T10 and X1. This is likely due to the addition of the lifting mopping system, and for the first time in my test, it overfilled the dustbin, spilling out a bunch of litter under the robot vacuum. Running the T20 in my home yielded similar results, as I often found the dustbin to have hair flowing out of the opening. It's a flawed design in my opinion. We will see how this impacts the auto-empty test later in this video. The next change could be considered good or bad depending on where you stand with privacy. Ecovacs revised their object avoidance system to drop the camera in favor of using multiple structured light sensors, unlike the T10, which only uses a camera, and the X1, which uses a combination of both. I ran the T20 through my standard object avoidance challenge, and the performance was about average. The T20 could not avoid cords, unlike the T10 and X1. It also got way too close to the fake animal waste on carpet and on hard floor surfaces. In my testing, the T20 often sucked up cables laying around my house, which is disappointing since Ecovacs is one of the only companies that I've been able to praise for the obstacle avoidance, specifically with cords. Taking a close look at the dock, we have several more changes. The biggest change is with the dock's ability to instantly heat the water from an internal 4-liter water tank that aids in the cleaning of the mopping pads. Ecovacs claims the water heats to 131 degrees Fahrenheit. However, I was only able to achieve 120 degrees in my testing, where I was heating 80-degree tap water. Keep in mind this is not hot water mopping, since the robot has no internal water tank, and the water on the pads quickly cools off once the robot leaves the dock. The next change is with the dock buttons, which went from 3 buttons on the other OMNI models to a single multifunction button. Another change is with the removal of the storage tray for the cleaning brush, which was included on the T10 and X1 OMNI. I expected the auto empty performance to be the same. However, if you recall earlier, I mentioned the Dustbin being a smaller design, which meant that when the T20 cleaned my 1,500 square foot floor plan, the Dustbin was so full I had to perform 2 auto empty sessions to completely clear the contents. The main issue is the dirt is pulled in towards the narrow filter opening, which leaves some empty spaces in the ends, so the actual capacity is even smaller. I think Ecovacs anticipated this, so they added a neat new feature in the app that now returns to the dock to auto-empty according to the mop washing schedule. This even works in vacuum-only mode, so it does seem to solve the problem, at least for me. The Ecovacs app has always been problematic, and with the T20, things are not much different. While Ecovacs is known for having an app packed full of features, some of which I am a huge fan of, the overall experience using the app is not the greatest. The T20 quickly mapped my home, but when it came to the time to divide my floor plan, it took almost 45 minutes of trying over and over to divide my rooms, which is something that just should not happen. The app also suffers from a confusing layout of settings menus and often freezes and locks up, requiring you having to exit and go back in. And I'm not alone here either, as the app is the #1 complaint I hear from my viewers and online in the app reviews. I do hope Ecovacs will dedicate some time to make some real software improvements because the competition is much better in this category. The overall navigation was good, not perfect, but I would say acceptable for most. At times it would spin around in circles before picking up where it should, but I will praise it for being very gentle and not slamming into objects like table and chair legs. In conclusion, the T20 to me feels like it was rushed to market, with it being 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards, which is a real shame since the T20 has several great things going for it, like the awesome price, lifting mopping pads, and a first-of-its-kind hot water mop washing system. In 2023, I feel an ultra-style robot vacuum that retails for above $1,000 should certainly include a mop lifting feature, so I'm glad to finally see Ecovacs including it. The main issue I have with the T20 is with the inconsistencies in the cleaning performance on hard floors, a lack of an internal water tank, and several issues with the robot's logic with the lifting mopping pads, which should be able to be sorted out through future firmware updates. I'd like to know what you think about the T20 OMNI. Am I being too hard on it, or do you feel some of these issues are inexcusable? Drop that comment down below. And I want to thank everyone for watching this video, and if you've not already, please subscribe to help support the work that goes into these type of in-depth and honest robot vacuum reviews. Take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.